Good morning. My name is Raluca Sfetcu and I'm a researcher at the National School of Public Health, Management and Professional Development in Bucharest. I'm also part of the Working Group 3 of the EBR Cost Action, and I'm going to share with you today preliminary results from the third project of our group. So in addition to the two scoping reviews presented by my colleagues Barbara and Lisa, we have also conducted a qualitative study on the topic of which steps of the systematic review process are perceived as resource intensive and why this is the case. More specifically, we wanted to understand why the steps are resource intense, but also to identify tools that experienced reviewers use and their views on what could increase the efficiency of systematic review production. As participants, we have invited lead authors and co-authors of systematic reviews, making sure to include different types of expertise. We have therefore the aim to include both reviewers affiliated with key organizations such as Cochrane, Campbell, or GBI, as well as academics which are not affiliated with any of these collaborations. To have a more complete image, we have also planned to include information specialists as well as statisticians and methodologists. The way we have reached our participants was by convenience sampling, as we have disseminated an invitation and a short registration form through our FBREST networks. We have also asked support for wider dissemination in FBREST members' professional networks, and we have asked our participants to suggest potential interviewees. Altogether, we conducted 32 interviews between February and November last year via Zoom. The duration was between 30 and 110 minutes, and we asked questions about previous experience with conducting and updating systematic reviews, as well as why some steps of the systematic review process are resource intensive. We have used the list proposed by SAFNAT in 2014 and supplemented it with two additional steps: critical appraisal and grading the certainty of evidence. And the interview guide was piloted with one of team members during our meeting in Krems last year. Our participants are coming from 17 different countries, and most of them identified as researcher, followed by clinical practitioner or statistician methodologist. In terms of experience and affiliation, more than 70% of our participants have been involved in over 10 systematic reviews, and the majority of them are affiliated to university, while around three-quarters are affiliated with Cochrane. Moving on to the results, while there's variation between our participants' experiences with how resource intensive a particular step is, 4 of the 16 steps of the systematic review process have been consistently identified as more resource intensive than the others. The screening of the abstract is the first of the 4 resource-intensive steps. The reasons why this is perceived so are the high volume of work, conducted generally by a small team of people who are also very busy. Due to the fact that data is often reported poorly, incompletely, or in an unstandardized manner, data extraction is also experienced as a resource-intensive step. The critical appraisal of included study is also not a quick thing to do in the view of our participants, and this got more intensive with the introduction of new assessment tools such as risk of bias 2. Lastly, the certainty of evidence assessment can also be perceived as a resource-intensive step, but this is especially true for novice people who might make it more difficult than it is or use it in a very rigorous way. In terms of which are the tools that experienced reviewers actually use, as well as their views on what could increase the efficiency of systematic review production, we'll now go through each step and briefly discuss our results. So for the first step, formulating the question, not much seems to be available and expertise is the key. One participant did mention using 3I to identify the gaps in the evidence, and that was also perceived as potentially helpful in general. For finding previous systematic reviews, using filters was the most common strategy mentioned, together with the databases where the searches are run, like Epistemonicos and Prospero. And for writing the protocol, the most frequently mentioned practice was the use of a predefined Word template. Revman and summary have also been mentioned as possibilities. As for devising the search strategy, expertise is again key, although a few online tools have been mentioned, such as Lexomancer used in qualitative mainly by creating word clouds, Yell Mesh Analyzers, Nomad, or BioPortal.
For search, the expertise was also the key requirement, and a lot of participants have mentioned that they would really enjoy a magic button. But I will give immediately an illustration of what that means. And for deduplication, and Node was most frequently used, followed by Covidence. A couple of other softwares was also mentioned. Coming back to the magic button, it was very interesting for us to discover that several of our participants are really hoping for the development of such a magic button that would either generate the correct syntaxes for different databases or automatically translate the syntax or even share the searches with the other teams. Concerning the duplication, a lot of progress has been made, and this is recognized by our participants. Regardless, it remains quite fiddly and not very fun. In the words of one of our participants, you're searching across multiple sources that each format the references in different ways. They each have different export filters. The duping is there are, so many different dedupe algorithms. Do you just go with something kind of automated and hope for the best, and still tons of duplicates in there? Different record formats now that we're dealing with. So it's not just bibliographic records, there are trial registered records as well as other kind of great literature stuff. It's all quite fiddly and not very fun, concludes this participant that we're citing here. Additionally, it might be the case that based on a single trial, you might have up to 100 publications. So this is a different issue, but was still mentioned under the duplication category. Possible resolutions for these two issues would be, on the one hand, to standardize some of the way the databases format their records, and on the other hand, for the trial to link related report to the trial ID. For screening abstract, Covidence was the most frequently used tool, followed by RAN and Abstractor, and for obtaining full text, EndNote was the most frequently mentioned, followed by Covidence. Screening has also become easier in the last years, especially in Covidence. Our participants mentioned that they can do it quite easy on the phone, can do it on the tram or even on the train. At the same time, then mentioned the limit that Covidence is not available for all people and it's relatively costly. Covidence is also the preferred tool for screening the full text. For snowballing, this is a step highly dependent on expertise, and for data extraction, the most frequently mentioned software was Excel, followed by Word, Covidence, and Epi Reviewer. When it comes to data extraction, using a single software might not be a solution. One participant remembers using Covidence twice for data extraction, once for a clinical question, and that was super easy. And when trying to use it for a public health question, he discovered that it was actually a very ill fit. More structured tools like Covidence and RedCap have benefits that it makes it easy to extract the information, but in the same time, it does not provide a lot of flexibility. And this low level of flexibility might make the design of tools more resource intensive. A different participant remembers using Excel to set up a data extraction sheet and taking only 1 or 2 hours to have it finished. But in RedCap, for example, a data extraction sheet might take about 1 or 2 weeks. Thinking about how data extraction can be improved, in the medium term, participants discuss about reusable data. So if say one person's extracted data from a study and did it using semantic technology or some sort of structured framework, then that can be reusable in other systematic reviews as well, a participant tells us. On the long run, the ideal would be to do better upstream, meaning to devise more sensible ways of registering research and making sure it is indexed properly. And For example, that might look like an appendix where the research data is listed neatly for extraction, or even recording data that's already coded in a computable format so that automated updates for systematic reviews or meta-analysis can be done in the future. For critical appraisal, the most frequently used tool was also Excel or Word, while for synthesizing data and meta-analysis, the most frequently used was DraftMan, together with our package and Stata. For grading the certainty of evidence, grade ProGDT has proved to be a great tool, although you still need a lot of expertise to use it. And for writing up the review, most of the participants are using Word templates, although we have mentions of RevMan Whole and Summary. As these are only preliminary results and looking into the future of what technology might become in a couple of years, I would conclude by citing one of our participants that says, how about one single resource that integrates all software? It's basically online. We don't have to change software, it integrates artificial intelligence and facilitates the process, and that allows the online continuous update. It integrates the searches with the database so you get alerts about the studies. For the last couple of seconds, I wish to thank all my colleagues in Working Group 3 to thank you for your attention, and I'm happy to take questions.